Hey everyone, Clay here. This episode should be the birds, but I had been doing a bit of traveling, and so we needed a little bit of buffer time. So instead, we're putting out a Patreon episode that we did, I thought, only last year, but apparently this is from 2020. So this is an intro to the intro, which is now horribly out of date. We'll be doing Attack the Block. The rating we talk about in the intro says that it is number 90 on our list. It is currently number 93, so it's a bit of a throwback to some of those list shenanigans. But yeah, this is me, Amanda, and Wes talking about Attack the Block, and enjoy a bit of a trip down the COVID memory lane, because this is from December of 2020, so we were all right in the thick of that fun stuff. So enjoy, and we will be back next time with Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. Thanks, guys. Hey everyone, welcome again to the Rotten Horror Picture Show, the horror movie podcast where we talk about films off of Rotten Tomatoes' 200 best horror movies of all time list. My name is Clay, and with me as always is Amanda. Amanda, how are you doing?
I'm okay. How you doing?
I'm doing good, bruv. Today we are talking about a science fiction horror film from 2011 called Attack the Block, and we had actually recorded this conversation with Wes from our parent umbrella corporation, the Penske File, for a Patreon episode a while back, and so we're going to throw it to that after we do our usual intros. But yeah, this is Attack the Block from. It's different because we did the Have We Seen This Before and the other thing, so I don't want to redo it. So let's just take a break. We'll go to the trailer and then we'll cover all the other stuff.
That's an alien, bruv. Believe it. When I landed in the wrong place, though, you get me? The wrong place.
Well, lads, you discovered a species hitherto unknown to science.
He kicked his head in. Yo, check it. More. More what? Them things.
Lovely fireworks.
Nah, mate, it's an alien invasion.
Of course it is.
I'm killing them straight. Let's get tooled up, blood.
Quite sweet, really, aren't they?
That looks triple the size bin.
Right now, I feel like going home, locking my door, and playing FIFA.
What were those things?
Thinking probably aliens.
What kind of alien would invade some council estate in South London?
One that's looking for a fight.
What is that?
Sorry about the driving. I'm getting lessons for Christmas. Whoa! Got no credit.
Got one text left. This is too much madness to explain in one text.
We have to call the police.
You'd be better off calling the Ghostbusters, love.
No, what's wrong with you, man?
You got tools. Jesus, he looks about 6.
A 9.5.
We need to get off the streets. Back in the block.
Wait, this is safe. Good luck.
All right, Attack the Block from 2011, number 90 on our Rotten Tomatoes.
90, Jesus.
Yeah, 200 best horror movies list. 90. 90. With
This list is insane.
With a,
I'm sorry.
And that's not to say that this is a bad movie, because it's really not. But it's just like, come on, if you're doing the Shining test,
Yeah, we need to stop looking at this list holistically.
Yes, yeah.
It just doesn't work.
It's number 90 with a 90% Rotten Tomatoes score. It's directed by Joe Cornish, written by Joe Cornish, starring John Boyega, Jodie Whittaker, Nick Frost, and Cockney, which is a joke you will hear again when we throw it to the other podcast recording. Amanda, what happens in Attack the Block?
South London teenagers defend their neighborhood from malevolent extraterrestrials.
Okay, I guess that covers it, yeah.
Not much else to say beyond that.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah, but Clay, some things you'll find in this movie include teeth.
Triumphant return of teeth, glowing teeth in this one, a lot of them.
Glowing teeth. Yes. Aggressive onomatopoeia.
Brap, 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 brap.
Very aggressive. Deadly extraterrestrial mating rituals.
Which is pretty gross when you think about it, but as you said, love is a battlefield.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Ugh. Questionable uncling. And of course, questionable neighboring. I guess there's some questionable parenting in this too.
I think so. I mean, who knows what these kids... These parents don't know where their children are.
And it's past 10 o'clock.
Yeah. But yeah, so we're going to throw it over now to our previously recorded coverage of Attack the Block with Wes. And thanks. We will talk to you soon. Hello, Penske patrons. We are here with our December Patreon podcast content, where we will be covering Attack the Block, which is what is a random selection off of the Rotten Tomatoes. How many is it? Like 65 greatest or something? Wes?
150.
62 is Christmas. It's 150 for sci-fi.
They couldn't get more than 62 for Christmas. But we're doing Attack the Block, and since this is a crossover with Rotten Horror Picture Show, because Attack the Block is also on Rotten Horror Picture Show's list, we have Amanda with us. Amanda, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Not too bad.
Good.
Getting ready for Christmas. You guys all set for Christmas at home this year?
I'm Thanksgiving went better than we thought it would, so I'm not totally upset about not having a Christmas that's not a lot of family and stuff. We're seeing them in like limited capacity before the holiday, just like meeting outside to exchange gifts and stuff, but it's really nothing more than like sharing a sandwich, hopefully while the weather is 40 degrees and not raining.
Have you gotten to the point that the WWE has gotten to where they stopped running their house shows and they were like, this is actually great. We make more money if we don't go anywhere.
If you don't spend anything, the money you're bringing in seems like a lot more. I think that's the lesson we're all learning in COVID. Yep. Just don't spend anything. Don't do anything. And hopefully your job is secure enough where you don't lose your income and you're going to be okay at that point.
Right. And then you just fire the people who are below you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Clay, bad news.
Anyway.
This is Clay's last Patreon exclusive.
I like how Clay gets cut before I do.
Well, we
I'm
talked
more
about
expensive.
This. Yeah. He's
Anyway, speaking of sticking to your home, that's a bad segue. We're talking about Attack the Block, which is a 2011 sci-fi film. It takes place in England, and there's aliens that come down and attack a... How would you describe it? It's a block of apartments, right?
Yeah, it's a project.
Yeah.
Project housing. It's the inner city versus outer space, as it says on the tagline.
Ooh,
oh,
that's
wow.
a good tagline,
I missed that.
Yeah. And it's directed by Joe Cornish, written by Joe Cornish, starring John Boyega, Jodie Whittaker, Nick Frost, and Cockney. I don't actually think it's actual Cockney, but it's the only thing I know. It's actually South London dialect. But
yeah. They have some weird term for it. It's called like cultural London, multicultural London English is what it's called.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, where did that come from?
I don't know. That seems like a really recent development that would come around. It's a socioactive English that emerged in the late 20th century. It's spoken authentically by mainly young working class people in London.
That does sound like a modern phrase to place on something that 100 years ago would have been referred to as like twart or something. You know?
Oh, it's Ebonics.
Speaking twart.
It's like the London version of Ebonics, basically. They just kind of dressed it up with a very academic-sounding title, and they're like, "This." I guess Ebonics was academic when it first came out too, but it's like that kind of a thing. It's just an evolution of that.
They turned on that one
I can
pretty
just
quick.
say slang.
Right. It's just,
It's just slang.
Yeah,
This is where we're talking about, Amanda. There's too much education now. People are like, slang is no good. This is a multicultural, universal set of dialectics that are used to communicate things between people.
But can we ever really communicate between people, Wes?
No, unfortunately not. Maybe this movie does more to heal the divide than anything else.
Not till everyone starts speaking twart. Now, Amanda, had you seen this one before?
Well, it's also a horror movie, right? You have to say it's a sci-fi comedy horror movie, which is why it's on the Rotten Horror Picture Show list as well.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
I think we can probably get into that a little bit later. Which aisle it spends more time in, which column it takes up more space in. Had you seen this before, Amanda?
I had, yeah. This was my. I feel like I maybe saw it. I definitely watched it with like full attention at least once.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like maybe I had seen it before that in like bits and pieces, but yeah, this was probably my like say second and a half time watching this.
Oh, that's
movie.
right, because we actually watched this like 8 months ago in our quarantine movie watch group. So I forgot about that. What about you, Wes? Had you seen it before?
No, never heard of it. Never seen it before. This is my first time watching it.
You had never heard of it, really? Okay.
Yeah, never heard of it.
Wow.
So what?
But
were
I
your
came
guys-
away
what were
from
your-
it saying, "This John Boyega, he's going places." That's,
Well,
This guy, he's just got something, doesn't he?
It's really funny because 3 of the cast members of this went on to be fairly large genre presences. You've got Jodie Whittaker, who ended up as the Doctor on Doctor Who, and John Boyega, who was, of course, Finn in Star Wars, and the kid who plays Dennis is he was on Legends of Tomorrow and The Flash as Firestorm. And then you've got one of the other ones who I believe was in a movie called Strippers versus Vampires. No, sorry, Werewolves.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you can't win them all.
I know that movie. Yeah,
I don't know.
obviously.
That sounds like a win to me.
But yeah, Wes, what's your first impression of this one?
This is a movie it's the kind of movie that sometimes falls into these lists that we stumble into where, having never heard of it and not particularly known anything about it, and what number is it on the horror list?
It is number 90, which is
high,
very high. Yes.
So it's low on the sci-fi list. It's like 104
Interesting.
or something, 105.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my general impression of it was it's a movie that is on all these lists. It has like 7 different genres on it, and I don't know if it does any of them well, really, to the point where I don't know if it didn't really grab me as a movie. And I think it's because it doesn't particularly do anything well, except for I think its direction is really good. I think it's well directed. But it's one of those movies. It's just like it's on these lists. It randomly came up. And as I was watching it, it was like, I'm not going to remember that. I hope we record this soon because I'm not going to remember it in a week.
Right.
And that's basically my general takeaway. And I'm honestly surprised that so many of the contemporary reviews were like, John Boyega, this guy's doing stuff, because it didn't stick out to me really as anything special. And that's my general sense of the movie. It's a whole bunch of stuff thrown together, and none of it particularly excels in any way.
Well, that's what I found interesting about it, because I remember the first time we watched it, I don't know, 6 months ago or so. In the back of my head, I remember when this came out, and it was like, oh my God, Attack the Block. You got to see Attack the Block. It's so good. It's so good. You got to see it. And so I was really looking forward to it going into it the first time, and I was kind of underwhelmed by it. This time around, I think I liked it a bit more because I generally knew what the thrust of the story was and where it was going, and so it was a lot more fun this time than it was me trying to justify the legion of positive reviews when it came out.
Waiting for the horror moments. You're like, when is there going to be a horror moment in this movie?
Yeah, it seems like it's just horror because there's a monster in it. But,
there's 3 jump scares, I think, and that classifies it as a horror movie.
But yeah, it's kind of just like, it's a very simple story. It's about as simple of a story as you can get, where it's aliens attack this housing project and the people involved have to survive. And I think why John Boyega stood out to people is because he manages to do a lot with pretty much nothing.
Yeah.
Because he spends the entire time just sort of like staring intensely off camera.
Yeah.
And
glowering at things.
Yeah, he kind of conveys this sense of conflict, even though he has very few lines in the movie, which is kind of impressive. What were your thoughts, Amanda, this time around?
Yeah, I think I had a kind of similar reaction where I liked it a little bit more this time. I think partially because I had an easier time, like, remembering and distinguishing the kids, the boys from each other. Like, I sort of already knew which role each one of them was going to play, and I was less like, wait a minute, where are they? Because there's a couple like scenes where they kind of split up and then they come back together, and it gets kind of confusing about, you're like, wait, all right, who was on the bicycle and who was on the moped, right, and who ended up in the dumpster, and like which one is where. And this time, because I remembered all of them from last time, I think I could pay more attention to sort of both like the funnier kind of throwaway lines that the boys did have with each other. And also I could pay a little bit more attention to the sort of like meta themes that this movie is like really trying to hammer home, which interestingly, I feel like I kind of missed the first time I watched this, and then this time I felt like they were like smacking me in the face with them, and I was
what?
kind of...
You missed the black people have been killing each other long enough, and now Whitey wants to speed up the process from John Boyega. That's my favorite line.
Well, I mean, so I definitely I got that the first time I watched this movie, obviously, because they say it very overtly. But I missed some of the like the more subtle things about like for instance, the whole character of, I think his name is Brewis,
the nerdy white guy.
Yeah, like there's so much about him and his character that it's like, oh, you're this like upper middle class kind of like, you have your almost posh accent, you're like very overeducated, and you're pretty much just coming here to like slum it for fun, to get your weed, and you're driving your dad's fancy car. And there's this whole exchange where he says to the drug dealer, well, I can't get busted again. And they're like, oh, you got busted? What happened? And he's like, oh, well, my dad realized I was smoking weed and he cut my allowance.
Yes.
Yeah. And there was some stuff like that I hadn't really spotted before, because I think I was so busy trying to be like, all right, it's a pretty big cast of characters when you think about it, when you add in all the peripheral, like the girls and the cops and all this. And I think I spent so much time the first time around just trying to like map out in my head where everybody was at any given time, that I lost out on some of that stuff. But
come on, love.
I don't know.
Come on, love. You got to pay attention, love.
If one more person was using the word bruv, I was just going to lose my mind.
Wes, you better back up or else you're going to get murked.
My favorite thing.
I hope Kyle, our one of our British listeners, is cringing very hard.
I am sure they are.
I mean, the funny thing about it is I can't tell if slang in other languages is more or less annoying to me than, like, if they were saying bruh or something. I find bruv more annoying to me. Maybe because it's so novel that it like grates on me when I hear it. So the funny thing about this movie is that the conversations, I was actually expecting to have more difficulty understanding what they were saying to each other, but I don't really have any problem tracking what they're saying, because like you were saying, Clay, I feel like they say the same 5 slang words over and over again.
Right.
They say fed, merc, bruv, love, and in it. And that's like, those are like the
it was driving me nuts. And this is really stupid, but like I was processing in it. It's like, okay, in it is supposed to be isn't it, right? It's like a shortening of that. But they don't use it explicitly for isn't it. They use it like in 3 different ways that grammatically, if you stretched into isn't it, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, obviously it's slang.
It's very
That's just
slangy,
how these things go.
It's really just like a placeholder at the end of a sentence.
Yeah.
You just kind of say it. Yeah.
And I know I sound like an asshole from the colonies or something, trying to break down the grammatical accuracy of South London slang. But from my position at Harvard English school.
But I think it speaks to
Hey, watch it.
It speaks to
I
a
forgot
bigger,
that's where you're getting your master's from.
It speaks to a bigger
How come
problem.
you're not all over this, Amanda?
I feel attacked, Clay. I came here to have a good time, and now I feel attacked.
To me, it speaks to a bigger problem, though. It's that the kids here don't feel authentic to me, and I think that's
interesting. Okay,
because like I find the London in like Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels to be more authentic than this for some reason. And I have a problem tracking what they're talking about, because to me they feel more like they're authentically talking, and it's not a scripted version of what this language is supposed to be.
Sure.
And I think it ties into more of my bigger problem with the meta of it, is that I feel like this movie exists just before the crest of like wokeness came around, and it seems really green booky in a lot of ways. Like it seems like this really strange white guy's opinion about projects to me. And it doesn't like it feels like it came just before this huge change where I don't think a movie like this could really be made anymore, not in America. And not because it's like particularly offensive or anything, but it's because it's so like white Hollywood producer looking at something and writing a story about it.
Yeah.
And it's really strange.
It's like Candyman. We had the exact same response to Candyman, which was, this feels like, and was, a white guy who went to Chicago and just watched how things happened in Chicago in the more poor sections of Chicago, and then wrote a movie based around it. So it feels that way. This one, and that is essentially what the director and writer did for this, where he was like, I went to South London and I studied the kids who tried to mug. He actually got mugged.
Yeah, he got mugged. I read that, yeah.
Which was the genesis for the story. And then he was like, and then I learned about their lives and decided to write an awesome movie about it.
Oh my God.
But it's interesting because I mean, maybe it's just because I don't have any frame of reference for that kind of culture, but I didn't think they particularly felt too scripty. And I think the thing that works the most about this movie isn't, and I think the thing why it garnered such a response isn't the sci-fi horror aspect of it. I think it's the setting, because it's a fairly unique setting. You've got this housing project in South London. You've got these kids who are very specific kinds of characters, with a very specific dialect. They kind of have their own, the only existing community that you see, because this is a housing project that seems to only have like 10 people who live in it.
A real eclectic mix
like,
of people.
Where is everybody?
Yeah, it's yeah. Sorry, go ahead if you're going to finish your thought about
it. I think the setting of the particular story is the thing that was so novel, and I think the monsters are really fun and have a really unique look to them, and are great low budget monsters where it's like we have this. They're really identifiable, and you could pick them out of a lineup of creatures in a way that I don't think you can in a lot of modern horror monster sci-fi movies, because monster designs tend to be very samey these days. This is a very specific, fairly iconic look to them, which is also very simple and works pretty well. But I think it's that stuff. I think it's the trappings of it more so than the story they're actually telling. Because, Amanda, you're talking about the meta themes and stuff that they're hammering home with you. I've been, I'm in the process of writing the last chapter of my book, and so I'm thinking a lot about character arcs and stuff like this, and heroes and whatnot. And I'm watching this, and I'm looking at Moses, and I'm thinking, man,
Moses.
It's really Moses.
it's Amanda. It just made me laugh about it. You were like, I missed some of the themes early on. The main character is Moses.
Yeah. Yes, he's Moses.
and I'm looking at Moses and I'm thinking, man, it's really ballsy to make the hero of your movie someone who's pretty explicitly bad, because they don't have a quote unquote save the cat moment for him early in the movie. He straight up pulls a knife and mugs Jodie Whittaker and is fairly unapologetic about it, and is a fairly unapologetic kind of tough guy. But Boyega gives it that sense of conflict in the stuff that he's not saying, so they make it work. But I'm looking at Moses. I'm thinking, what is this guy after? What is his character arc in this movie, and what's the theme they're trying to get across? And then at some point, Jodie Whittaker basically turns to the camera and goes, actions have consequences. And I was like, there it is. So I think that's the thing, is it's really fun, and the monsters are cool, the setting is cool, the environment's cool, but thematically, I don't think it's as, and even structurally, I don't think it's as tight or engaging as it could be.
Yeah, I just there is one thing though that I wanted to kind of bat around a little bit with you guys,
Sure.
which is, talking about the sort of the characters, the subculture, and how I think for all of us it feels just a little it doesn't really connect.
Mm-hmm.
I think one interesting thing is that I think the teenage boys, usually aside from Moses actually, I think part of the reason their slang and their behavior and all of that feels so kind of hokey is that they are kind of on purpose performing this attitude.
That's true. Yeah.
And yeah, it's this exaggerated way of speaking because there are a bunch of 13, 14, 15-year-old boys who are all trying to seem tougher than they are and harder than they are, and they're imitating the older men and young men that they see around the block. Mm-hmm. So I think there is that sort of they are actually putting on a performance for each other, which is why it doesn't feel that authentic when you watch them, because they are sort of on purpose playing up these certain things about themselves.
But yeah, that's a good point.
Well, I don't know if this is a disagreement. I guess in the context of the movie, there is no one who's not performing. So even their hard drug dealer boss guy is a goofball,
that's true. Yeah.
There's no one in this that the reason it seems like a white guy who drove in from West Hollywood is because there seems to be no sense of actual danger in this project or bad life that they're living. Interestingly, all the kids seem to come from full homes. When they have that scene where they go back and talk to their parents, except for Moses, but they all go back and talk to their parents in some of the scenes and are I'm going out with my friends and come back for dinner or whatever.
Right.
And so it seems like it's the point of view of the film is that the life in these kinds of housing situations is fake. There's no, it's all kind of an act, and that no one is actually in any kind of downtrodden situation outside of these sort of strange setups where you're mugging and then being forgiven and stuff like that. I just thought if you're gonna have the theme be that, I think you suffer by making it a comedy film at the same time and not focusing on the comedy of the situation and just turning it into a sci-fi comedy or horror comedy. It just struck me as really weird. If you're going to approach this and use this as the setup, it's very much like Green Book's magical Negro problem, where Viggo Mortensen is just well, I spent a lot of time with this black guy. I got to tell you, not as bad as I thought. And
listen, you don't have to throw me out. My black friend said I could say the N-word. It's fine. I know he's not here to back me up on this, but you should.
That's my big problem, I think, is that it doesn't seem to be approaching the material in a way that is really interesting. Get Out is interesting to me, and that Get Out feels like it's something with an opinion that is kind of a fresh take on something. This just feels like a kind of clownish attempt to put some modern theme onto a, in my opinion, a fairly generic movie outside of that. And I don't know, I probably sound harsher on this movie than I am, because I kind of enjoyed watching it, but I walked away from it more surprised. It's the curse of these lists. I walked away going, why is this on these lists, basically?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Oh, so go ahead, Amanda.
I was just gonna say I kind of want to quibble a little bit with the Wes. Your the use of the word fake.
Ooh, yeah. Brap, 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 brap.
I
Get 'em.
think
Get 'em.
no, you know.
Are you
don't-
playing that guy's song? What's that guy's song?
Oh my God, yeah. Hi-hat song,
Hi-hat
which was
song,
something.
yeah.
Get the
I don't
get
know.
the gat, get the gear, kill the snitch or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those things.
Hi, we're all white here, by the way.
Yes, we're all very, very white. Just so like
you
when
could
you
use
when you
us
said
all
the
as
word
bounce lights on a film set if you wanted to.
Wes, when you said fake, I think like I had a similar like a slightly adjacent take to that, which is like I feel like what this movie did was it tried to have its cake and eat it too, in being like life in the projects is hard and things are scary and difficult for these young kids growing up. But then on the other hand, it's also trying to be like, but life in the projects is not the stereotype that, you know, lots of white people think it is, where it's, you know, minorities living in trash and just doing like drugs in the stairwell all night. It's like there can be decent apartments and, you know, people keep their spaces clean, and there can be good homes and good parents, and they still have to grapple with these things. I just think the movie did a bad job of balancing those two desires to show both of those things, and instead ends up just kind of negating both of them.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you're saying, Wes. Where if they are performative, then I think what they need is they need the inverse of that. They need someone to show the audience what the non-performative version of it is.
Right.
So,
which should be hi-hat. Which should be the hi-hat.
Yeah.
Right. Hi-hat should be legitimately a hard, no nonsense, you know, gangster.
Scary as the monsters in this, to the kids.
Yeah.
And I think, and I think that goes to where my confusion about the character motivations were coming from, because, like, not to open screenplay 101 on you guys or anything, but it's like I was watching this going like, what does Moses want? You know, because at the end of the movie he's defeated the monster and he's in the back of the thing, and the movie ends with him acknowledging the fact that everybody's cheering for him. But I never through the movie got the feeling that what he was looking for was like respect, or like to be viewed as like the king or anything like that, or to be taken seriously. So it was.
He assumes hi-hat's mantle in that scene somewhat. Like he becomes the hero of the project. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It never felt like he was going for that.
Yeah, there was no direct thing that he was fighting. It didn't feel like to me. Maybe I'm just completely missing it. It didn't feel like to me that there was anything subtextual that he was fighting against. It was just he's fighting against monsters, like literal monsters.
Yeah. I mean, the ending scene, I agree with you, is strange like that, and I don't really track what he wants. It seems like he's more driven by someone has to do it, and he's the leader, so therefore he does all these things. It's also, you know, the green booky aspect of it is that it relies on the word of a white woman to save him at the end.
Right.
It's this extremely strange thing. It's just this old holdover in what has been a fairly rapid change, and his lack of a point of view, I think, is the problem of the general point of view of the film, in that it doesn't really know what it's talking about or why it's saying these things. So Moses is just kind of dragged along in that problem because he, the writer and director of this, does not know what a character like Moses would want to do. And therefore he has a hard time putting that into that character, and it falls flat for me.
Amanda, do you have anything to
add? No, I mean, I agree with that very much, where it's such a bummer because I do think John Boyega does more with that character than most actors could do. But he's just given so little to work with. And yeah, it's interesting. I feel like every time I watch almost every time I watch movies, I think about what would this movie be like from if a different character were the central character. And this whole movie, especially this time watching it through, I was like, I wish this movie were about the girls.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the friends.
Kinda, yeah.
I feel like they would have been so much more fun to watch. Like if that's what you're gonna go for, if like, you know, if the more enjoyable parts of this are kind of more the like sci-fi set pieces and what have you, I would much rather watch those 4 girls kick alien ass instead.
I like the interaction between the girls and guys group. I thought that was the most realistic that the kids ever were. I thought that was a really good representation of 14 and 15-year-old opposite sexes talking to each other.
You know, it's I wish you hadn't said the Green Book thing, Wes, because now I'm like looking back on the movie going like, yeah, it is kind of, it's a lot of like white lady doesn't appreciate the conditions that the black kid is living in, and so once she finds out that he lives alone because his uncle is a ne'er-do-well, she's like, oh, I guess he's not all bad.
Yep.
And then, but I mean, like that end scene is it's not entirely that way, I don't think, because I think her character is sort of on this journey of being accepted into the new place that she's lived in, that she's, you know, afraid of because she got mugged and stuff. But so like her covering for him is sort of her being part of the crew now, sort of. But even still, it's like it does.
I agreed that I would also say I don't think it's a horrible version of what she does.
No, it's not. It's not. That's not the point of the movie.
Right.
You know, it's not.
Right.
It's not. The real monster we fought here was racism.
But it's the lack of Moses having.
But it's there.
It's the lack of Moses having a character that you can't focus on him at that point. You have to take the Jodie Whittaker character and have her save the day, sort of, by saving him at the end.
And because even when they do that bit about Moses living on his own and fending for himself as sort of like, okay, now you're getting to learn what he's all about, I still don't think that adds to his character that much, because that's not, I don't know how that is informing his actions or the character you're seeing in the movie, because it's not, like I said, I never get the feeling that he's trying to elevate himself inside this criminal enterprise because he's got nothing. You know what I mean? I don't know how that is responsible for his actions, other than it's kind of sad that he doesn't have any parents.
Well, what do you guys think the aliens represent here?
I don't know, apartheid or something?
Yeah.
No. That's District 9.
Oh, right.
Sorry. Is that coming? That's on one of the lists. Yeah, that's on my list, I think. Anyway, because I think there's a couple lines about what they think these monsters represent, although I didn't think it was really a coherent idea about what they were supposed to represent. Like they're kind of in some ways they're the like hidden dangers of the projects come to life is like what they're supposed to be. But I didn't think that the movie doesn't have enough scenes of dialogue where that comes across in any way that's subtle or interesting. Like when every moment I think that this movie could have been about something, he was like, I want to film an action scene on scooters, you know? Yeah. And so you got a lot of well shot action sequences where they're driving through the city. It looks great because it's all at night and everything. Like the lighting's done well and it looks clean. The direction is nice and there's a lot of smoke and a lot of mirrors, literally sometimes. But whenever there's a chance for the characters to do something, it tends to just go into a scooter chase or a run sequence or something like that. And I think that that's what I wanted, especially as I'm coming at this from like the sci-fi list. If they're not going to broach it in a really interesting sci-fi way, it becomes a horror movie. And then if I'm like, okay, now I'm just going to look at this as a horror movie, I think it's a terrible horror movie.
Right, yeah.
You know, so I just bumped down the line and nothing ever particularly satisfying came up out of it. And I think maybe it's most effective as a comedy, and I don't even think it's particularly funny all the time.
Yeah. I was trying to think about that too, about what the monsters represent. And I mean, I know that we are talking about a slang speaking South London monster movie as though it's fucking, Keats or something. But I kept thinking like, what do these things represent, because I was searching for like what this thing is about, and the best I could come up with is they represent the consequences of the life that Moses is leading, because that's the moment where he kind of turns in the other direction, is when he realizes, oh, I killed this thing. I got covered with this stuff. And so anybody who came in contact with me and was part of the thing I did is now dead because of me. And, you know, they have that explicit line about actions have consequences, you know, lights all around it.
Yeah.
Don't just brutally murder an animal in a shed and expect to get away scot-free.
And like, so that's what I was like, okay, so these things are supposed to be like which is also why it was frustrating that there wasn't more of a desire for Moses to embed himself more into this lifestyle. Because when he ends up working for Hi-Hat, he's not happy about it. It's not like he's looking to go deal drugs or something. He just gets roped in. You know, so
he's kind of happy about it, though.
Oh, is he? Okay, maybe I missed it.
When he comes.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
When he comes out of the weed room, all of his friends are like, "Hey, why are you smiling? What's that smile for? What's going on?" And then they realize he's been like bumped up, like as like now he's gonna sell. I think he's selling cocaine or something.
Maybe my interpretation is ill-founded.
I think it's just that like hard man thing of he can't show happiness when Hi-Hat gives him the job. You know, he can't really be like, oh, thanks, man. Like, this is really, I appreciate this. He has to go off and act like a hard man and then go out to his friends who all pat him on the back.
Yeah. So maybe I'm just reading it wrong, and that is actually what he's after. It's just that he's so stoic about it that it's hard for it to come across.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. I like... So one thing that does kind of actually, I think, work for me in the sort of the scene you guys were just talking about where Jodie Whittaker's character goes into his apartment and realizes that he's like, you know, living alone because his uncle's a deadbeat and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. The thing that I actually found interesting that they do is when she asks, how old are you?
Yeah.
And he says, oh, I'm 15. Because I remember the first time I watched this movie being pretty shocked by that, because he does seem older than his friends. He does seem like he seems older physically and in the way he carries himself and his attitudes, and then to kind of realize that he's only 15 and he has like zero adult supervision in his life, it does kind of cast his motivations a little bit differently, where it is sort of like he's so young and like impressionable, and this is the only thing he's being shown as like, well, this is what you should do now. Like the only adults in his life are the ones telling him to sell drugs for them. So it did kind of change things a little bit for me, I think.
Well, you and I, we've talked many times before on Rotten Horror Picture Show about how we prefer less backstory and more backstory through action. Do you think, how do you feel about this movie? Do you think there's not enough for him? Or would you have preferred maybe they give you a little bit more of a background? Do you think they do enough with him in the movie to give you a sense of the character and his motivations and stuff?
You know, I don't think they need to give him a more explicit background. I think just showing kind of the apartment and the state that he's living in and like the realization of just how young he is covers a lot of those bases. The thing I wish we did at least get somewhat of a glimpse of is some level of insecurity in him. Like I would have liked to have seen that, because I think it would have maybe kind of given a hint earlier on of just how young he was, and maybe the fact that like he's not making these decisions from like a mature and developed standpoint. Like he's a kid and he thinks like, oh, okay, this is what you do.
He is fairly confident through 90% of the movie.
Yeah, and I think it would maybe add something, or at least complicate his character a little bit, to see him like doubt himself, or to see him like really realize that he fucked up and like actually have a reaction to that, and not just stoically be like, okay, well I'm the one who did this, so I'm the one who has to fix it. I'm gonna go blow them up. Like it would be nice to see him have like somewhat more of an emotional reaction to something like that.
Wes?
Yeah, I mean, I think the weakness is in the world building around him. Like, if the world was better around him, he would be better as a character because you would at least have a sense of what this character is growing up in. And as I thought, like, I think the world universe in this is kind of a joke in general. So his serious struggle doesn't really land with me. I think, like, the more traditional thing would just be if he is unhappy with the route his life is going in the block, right? And so he gets this job and he doesn't really want to be hi-hats guy, and which goes against what the movie's saying. But if he doesn't want this thing, but it's the only way that he can really sort of make ends meet, and then the alien invasion gives him a sense that he's better than that, like he can that there's something else to sort of do in a roundabout way. I feel like that's kind of where his character should sit, and I don't think he's there. That also seems a little bit generic to me, so I'd be more excited if someone with a better idea came along and improved that. But I just feel he's missing that sort of central tension that would make him an interesting character and react to the aliens in a way that I go, oh, that's why he cares about this stuff.
Speaking of world building, how do you guys feel about the block itself? I found it to be surprisingly empty for how big it is.
I feel like they run through 37 buildings and it's all the same building over the course. It's
And nobody's there.
Yeah,
like, they're setting off firecrackers in the hallway and there's a guy shooting his gun down the hallway and, like, nobody calls the cops sooner. Nobody kind of cracks the door open. Nobody screams from inside of one of the apartments. Like,
there's this nice, like, there's this nice / funny moment at the end where after he blows up the final batch of monsters, everybody else seems to be outside with the cops and stuff around, as though as this has been going on, they've been very slowly, quietly leaving the building.
Right, the fire alarm's been going off, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the only time you see a crowd of people that you could assume probably live in this building. But they keep, every time, like, they're blowing up windows. Multiple people have been murdered in the hallways, and nobody opens their door. It's just dead hallways where this stuff is happening.
Well, that's the thing, because I would find that if this is supposed to be a bad area, I can believe that. You know, like, I can believe there's the whole thing about, like, in the projects, the crimes go because no one will say anything about, like, what has happened in it. So I can see it kind of like, yeah, gunshots go off and stuff, and my neighbors can't help me because we're all locked inside because everyone's just going to mind their own business. The problem is that the kids are set up sort of clownish. So the kids exist in this very dark, serious world where I could see this universe and this building taking on this kind of horror aspect to it while being realistic. But the kids are so jokey and sort of cartoony on top of it, and hi-hats comes in out of nowhere, and then Brewis or whatever. And it doesn't mesh with the horror aspect that they're trying to build around what this project environment is supposed to be.
Yeah, and even if you want to go the sort of route of, okay, this is a bad area, there's lots of violence and crime, and people do just kind of lock their doors and bury their heads in the sand for their own self-preservation, like, you're still gonna sometimes have somebody else coming in from work because they work the night shift, or, you know, even if it's just the sound of a TV on, or somebody,
people drinking on the stairs, somebody, like, you know, it's just people usually doing stuff in any world, and there's none of that in this.
In a building with 19 floors and however many apartments on each floor, you're just gonna have some sort of background noise or something going on, and this place is, like, completely dead and empty.
I always think of one of my, I don't know if you could call this world building, but I consider it kind of world building. One of my favorite pieces of world building from a movie like this is in Ghostbusters, where the terror dog shows up at Lewis's party he's throwing and then smashes out into the hallway. And this woman who lives next door, this old woman, opens the door, leans out and goes, huh! And then just goes back into her room.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's just the acknowledgement that there's other people in the building. Not that they don't acknowledge it, because you do, you know, the girls seem to also live there as well.
Nick Frost lives there.
Nick Frost, yes. The patron saint of mid to low budget genre.
Yep.
Nick Frost is in this movie.
genre.
British genre, yeah. But yeah, it's just surprisingly dead in the hallways when all of this other stuff is going on.
It's also Guy Fawkes night, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know what they do. They must celebrate that somehow. Is it fireworks?
I think that's what the
it's just
fireworks are all about.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is everyone out of the building because they're watching the fireworks?
I don't know. I don't think we ever get a good,
it doesn't
clear
seem
idea.
like it.
Yeah, they don't.
I mean,
they don't really mention it. Yeah.
Yeah, when the boys all go to their houses, like they all have family members at home.
Yes, everyone's home. Yeah.
And I mean,
right. So at minimum, it's like, his Nana is there. Like, come on.
I do think that the actual answer is give them a break. It's a low budget movie. They could only afford 15 people.
£8 million.
I think that's true.
Yeah. So obviously, yes, we're asking questions that would be solved by more money. Absolutely.
Well,
I was just gonna say.
Go ahead. Sorry.
There were 15 pages of the script that had to be cut out for budgetary reasons. So,
were there?
Yeah. So I don't know if that was more world building stuff or monsters or what.
Yeah, maybe that's you aimed for the wrong location kind of thing. Maybe this is his directorial debut and writing debut, I think, for film anyway. But I guess this is kind of an awkward jump. But do you guys think this is a horror movie?
I don't think it's not if you're using a fairly broad, painting a broad brush, because it's more of a. I don't know. I feel like you and I are might have opposing viewpoints where you think it's more of a horror movie and I think it's more of a sci-fi movie.
No, I think this is more of a sci-fi movie. But I was going to say I think American Psycho is more of a horror movie than this is.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Sure.
I agree.
I think this literally only has 3 jump scares, and that's what defines it as a horror movie.
Well, I mean, I do think that the monsters, and I did want to get your guys' opinion about the aliens. I do think the aliens are pretty convincingly scary. That first shot of them, or not just the first shot, but the multiple times that they use this gag where their teeth double as their eyes, which I love is very cool.
I really like the female that they kill at the start. I think that's
the weird little goblin thing.
Just dragging it around on a backpack, like dragging it behind.
Yeah, wearing it like a backpack.
But yeah, how do you guys feel about the aliens, the design and the use and stuff?
You go ahead, Amanda.
Oh, I mean, I think they're really well done. I really like the simplicity of it, where it's just this sort of like void blackness and then the glowing teeth. I think it's really effective. I think it's really visually has a lot of impact. But I don't know. They're sort of, I feel like the second time watching it through, I was less scared of them. Like a kid on a bicycle outran them.
Yeah, that's true.
So I was a little bit like, which is, I think, part of the reason why I lean more towards this being a sci-fi movie as well, because I think the central thing that's so frightening about them is that they are aliens and you don't know what they want, why they're here, why they're attacking, or how to stop them. It's less that they themselves are so terror-inducing the minute you see them. I mean, they're scary, but they're not that level yet.
Well, the thing that I actually really appreciate is that they don't pull any punches as far as these things and their danger level, because I think very easily this movie gets made by someone else who says, well, I mean, we can't have these things killing kids. And these things fucking kill kids with no problem. And I think that goes a long way to upping the stakes, that this isn't Stranger Things where you're kind of like, they're all going to be fine. These things are killing your cast members, and they are pretty explicitly violent.
I think my problem with them as both a sci-fi and horror concept is that they don't really seem to have a superpower besides being dark black. Like an alien, the alien can move everywhere and you never know where it is, right? And so that's kind of its superpower. These things are just guys in gorilla suits that kind of chase after you. And it doesn't have the Langolier thing about chewing up time or anything interesting. It doesn't have a kind of quiet place thing where you can't make a sound and they hear you. Mm-hmm. They just kind of chase you, and if you lock the door behind them, you kind of fuck them over. Like unless there's a window that they can get through, they can't really get to you. So I just thought that their design was neat, but they don't have like this core power that is scary or something that you would want to guard against.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. The I think they are more of a unique and clever design than they are a good monster. Like I was thinking about this for a while as I was watching this. Like, this is kind of like the South London version of Cloverfield, where you're following it's a holiday, stuff falls from the sky, and then you've got these aliens that cause havoc while fairly rudimentary character work is being done underneath it, and you get like a good sense of the environment that they're in.
I thought I thought the fact that they're so dark you can't see them. How black are they? And someone should say there can be none more black or something. But like
yes.
they don't. I thought that was going to be more central to them, and all they really do is that they do a couple bits of you can see them and you can't see them in the shadows, but you can see their teeth coming at you. Mm-hmm. And I just thought there was like. It's just going back to the metaphor about the movie, what the movie's supposed to be like. You could see a thing where they're like the monsters in the projects are invisible because no one can see the problems in the projects, kind of a theme, you know? I don't think they really do that because everyone can see them once they bust out of the shadows immediately. It's not like they hide in darkness and you can't see them until it's too late or something like that. I just would have gone in that direction with it, or made it more like a quiet place, except you just can't see them instead of not hear them or something. But they wanted to do the gorilla suits, I guess, for whatever reason.
I guess there's also the white supremacist reading of this movie where you're like, well, the monsters there represent their literal blackness.
Yeah, they're right, and they're gorillas too. Like yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, okay. Well, maybe, I don't know,
what do their
if
teeth
that was
represent?
intentional or maybe like accidental, but
all those shiny grills people be getting these days with their glowing teeth.
Oh my god!
I think that's the clumsiness of it, because I don't think you should be drawing that conclusion from it.
Right.
Like, so I think it just goes back to there's a kind of clumsiness or lack of thought about what this movie is supposed to be about, and I think it hinders it in pretty much any regard.
Yeah, I do think we need to find one of these, a movie like this. How do I say this? That we are more positive on, because I was looking back at the movies we've covered for Rotten Horror Picture Show, and the ones that we haven't really liked so far tend to be we're like this one, Candyman. A girl walks home alone at night, and I'm like, I'm sensing a pattern here that I do not like.
Well, you need Get Out to come along, because
That's
Get Out
true.
is actually
Yes.
kind of brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Liking Get Out is the green book of movie criticism. Horror movie criticism. How's that for layers upon layers of?
Well, I mean, just to clarify for anyone, the reason Get Out excels for me is because when I was watching it, I was like, I've never seen a portrayal of racism this way.
Yes.
Like, this is a very clever portrayal, and it's the opposite of Green Book, which is just the magical Negro and Viggo Mortensen hang out in a car together.
Right, right.
Get Out is way more of a interesting sci-fi concept in that way. Like, it's very clever, and Attack the Block to me is just more of the generic sense of like, this is how you do a movie like this, and this is how you touch on these topics. And I just find the topics and the understanding of it to be so naive as to be like silly, kind of. And if the horror or sci-fi aspect isn't going to carry you through that weak theme, the movie is going to flounder. And I think that's what happens here.
Well, also remind me, the director and writer of this is white.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think that also is a big problem, where it's like, you know, this is a movie created by white people about an experience that they cannot actually inhabit, whereas Get Out is created by, you know, a black writer and director.
There's white kids in the gang. You can be poor and white and living in the project.
There's white kids who are desperately trying to be black.
Well, yeah, and just like given the thematic concerns we've talked about with this movie, where it is very, at times, very heavy-handed about the racial issues. I think that's part of why the bigger themes versus the actual action of the movie kind of, there's that disconnect and it doesn't quite work.
Yeah, he chose the wrong target, which is the strange thing. Like, if you're going to do this and you don't, he's and as Clay was saying, he's going to like, oh, let me go shimmy downtown to, downtown London at 2 a.m. and see if I get mugged is my experience for the script.
Hello, fellow youths.
Hello, youths.
He in the IMDb trivia thing, it said that he got mugged and then he researched the movie by learning more about the lives of the kids that mugged him.
Sure.
I don't know if it means literally, but in my head, I'm imagining him going and knocking on a door and being like, "Hi, you might remember me. You stole my wallet last night. Is it possible I could just like shadow you and see what you're all about?"
Well, there's this. I'm also probably kind of biased against this because there's this podcast series that NPR was doing that came out in like 92 or something, and it won a Peabody when it came out, and it was made by two like 14-year-olds who lived in a very bad project in Chicago before they were all demolished. And what spurred it was they went around and interviewed people in their neighborhood after there was this very famous case of, in their project housing, a 5-year-old was dropped out of a window by two 10-year-olds and killed.
Oh, jeez.
And so the podcast is about sort of like going around and seeing what the state of their neighborhood is and like how people are responding to that and like what kind of situation results in that kind of a thing. And the follow-up is just like, as your point, Clay, where this Cornish guy goes down and like wants to meet the lives of these kids. The heartbreaking thing about their take on it is much more realistic, but it's just like when you talk to the kids who drop the kid out the window, you're just like, these kids are just gone at this. Like you can't save these kids at this point. Like this has been too damaging for them as an environment. And I think the clownishness of it is just such a disconnect from like what you're trying to say with this setting. And I know that they're trying to be lighthearted about it, but it's like, I think it's just the wrong environment for the movie at that point, especially if you're going to have hi-hats and stuff in there and things like that. It just feels it's missing the mark, I think.
Yeah, it was what they needed to replace hi-hat with Stringer Bell.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even if it was a sort of comic role there, someone who could be intimidating at times, I think that's what they need there.
Yeah. Well, as we're wrapping up, we may as well talk about its placement on both lists that it's on. Number, what'd you say it was? 100? What on
105 on the 150 sci-fi. Yeah.
How do you feel about that placement on the 150 greatest sci-fi films of all time?
Too high. It shouldn't be on the list
at all. Okay.
No.
Yeah. That's what's interesting because when we talk about these lists. It's when I start thinking about what does and doesn't belong in the list, I'm like, well, I mean, 200 movies or 150 movies. Could I name 150 like great sci-fi movies? And then you read the list and you go, yes. But then you get to some and you're like, I think there's a couple on here that are better than that one.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I can't say.
I'm operating with the assumption if I haven't seen some of these movies, I would assume that anything around it is better than this movie. You know what I mean? Like in terms of a sci-fi list. So for instance, this is right around Upgrade, Star Trek First Contact, The World's End, Serenity, Paprika.
Interesting.
Liquid Sky. I think all of those are better. Sunshine. I think all of those are better than this one.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, I think this one is. Like I said at the beginning, I think it gets by mostly on the novelty of the setting than it does, and the monsters than it does anything else. What do you think, Amanda?
In terms of the placement on the horror movie list too?
This is at 90 on the horror list, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy to me. It wouldn't be on my horror list either.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as Rotten Horror list goes, yeah, I don't think that I think it's notable for its novelty, but yeah, I don't know if I would put this. Let's put it this way: Black Christmas was 199, and this is 90. I would at the very least switch those places in a heartbeat.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I personally don't really see this as a horror movie. I probably wouldn't be mad at somebody who tried to make the argument to me that it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably be like, well, okay, we have a different criteria. So I'm not like deeply offended that this is on this list at all.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it should be like somewhere between like 190 and 200 if it's going to be on here at all. The fact that it's number 90 on the horror movie list and like The Shining is what, like 105 or something?
The Shining, as of my last checkup, is currently at 113. So just to give you an idea of what's near this, we've got the four below it are Theater of Blood, Halloween 2018, Let Me In, and Color Out of Space. And the four above it are Eraserhead. That's an interesting inclusion. Eraserhead, Devil's Backbone, Housebound, and We Are Still Here. So it's a really weird place, actually, for the list, because we're in like the real kind of
it's the 400s in the Rolling Stone top 500 albums, where the 400s are where it's interesting. You're like, really?
Yeah, it's got a higher placement than Texas Chainsaw, The Wicker Man, 28 Days Later.
My argument would
Blair
be
Witch
it's not a horror
Project.
movie. I would just say this is not a horror movie, and so it doesn't belong on the horror movie list.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's scary. It's like, well, I mean, E.T. is scary. You know,
Yeah.
it's scary.
I find E.T. scarier than this.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I think if it's got to be on the list, if we can't remove it completely, I would say put it way lower.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's going to do it. Unless you guys had something else you guys wanted to wrap up with for this.
No, I mean, my final thing
it.
is I thought this movie was fine. It's just, it's one of those fine movies that is really, it doesn't have anything that I'm going to really remember about this. It's like, that's fine. I'm not upset that I watched it. I wasn't really bored while watching it, but once it's over, it's just one of those, you know, you kind of like, well, I'm glad I didn't pay to see that in the theater kind of thing. It's like, I'm glad that was, you know, we bought it with the Patreon money, which I guess is its own kind of version of that. But it's not something that I felt was worthwhile, I guess, which sounds harsh, but it's really not.
Amanda, final thoughts?
Yeah, kind of going along with what Wes just said. This is a movie where it like if somebody came to me and told me that this was one of their favorite movies, I would be very confused.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't dislike it. I actually, like I said, I enjoyed it more watching it the second time through, where I think I could give a little more space to sort of the more toss away humorous moments. But yeah, it doesn't leave enough of an impact, and it tries to do too much, in my opinion, and spreads itself too thin, and then doesn't do any of the things it tries to do as well as I think it could.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun, and I do think the caveat to what you're saying about not understanding why some would say it's their favorite movie is I would understand it if we were roughly 10 years in the future and this was a 23-year-old telling me they watched it when they were 13. Because it feels like that kind of movie where watching it as, you know, a jaded older person at this point, it's like, yeah, it's fun. It's a fun time, but it's not, you know, doing anything. It's not revolutionary in any way that's really affecting me. But if I was 13 or maybe, you know,
and
between
from
like
South London.
Yeah. If I was like 11 to 13 and saw this, I feel like it has potential to be one of those movies where you see it when you're young and it just makes maybe it's your first entry into genre type movies, horror, sci-fi stuff, and it's about kids. Like it's got a Goonies kind of feel to it that I think it could stick with a younger audience in a similar way.
Well, but if you're from South London or whatever and you're watching this, Amy was watching The Town in bed last night on the iPad, and I was just kind of like listening along. I imagine a similar thing where like I watch The Town and it's Ben Affleck just going like, hey, sit the fuck down. Hey, and it's just like, No one really talks like that in Boston anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I know it's supposed to be kind of a period piece or whatever, but I wonder if the South London thing comes across the same way, where it's like it's this heightened stylized choice that they're making and is not really realistic.
With that in mind, I do have to say, I would like to go on record and say the most accurate depiction of Boston that I have ever seen is the SNL Dunkin' Donuts commercial with Casey Affleck as the guy who hangs out at Dunkin' Donuts.
That's a true Boston accent, I would say.
Yeah, it's true accent, and everything he says is on point. The way he's dressed.
Yep. Cut your fucking fingernails.
Yeah. The part that I can't get over in that is at the end when he goes, I think being at Dunkin's is the best part of my day. Is that sad? And then the other guy goes, yes. And he just turns to his friend, takes his cup of coffee, and just very calmly throws it at the windshield of the guy's car.
Yep.
That's my only that's my only thing about the South London point. I wonder, we need our British listeners to tell us whether or not this is like something legitimate or not,
Yes, please do. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for Attack the Block. Wes, you want to take us out with any Patreon paperwork we have to cover?
Well, there is a generic Patreon for all the shows that fall under this umbrella, and so Rotten Horror Picture Show is one of those. And you can go to patreon.com/The Penske File if you want to support the show and the Star Trek show and Badass and everything else. Patreon.com/The Penske File is...
And I would like to say, I don't know if we've officially talked about this, Manda, but I'm going to let you know now.
Oh. Okay.
As of January 2021, Amanda and I will be starting our coverage of Friday the 13th, that series for Patreon. So you got that to look forward to.
That'll probably go in at the $5 tier. So if you're interested in catching all of those Friday the 13th movies, that none of them are on the list, so they're going to just go straight through them all on Patreon once a month. You can join patreon.com/The Penske File. And as always, a special thank you goes to our Captain tier supporters: Ben Douglas, Tarek Latif, Joint Mango, Kyle Barrett, Meg Burnett, Matthew Ross, Andrew Cholog, Cardinal Doomsday, Nathan Elliott, Samuel Custer, Matt Cutler, Nick Sergi, Grim Santo, Sean, Christian Pouch, Bradley Killens, Dwayne Hackett, Chris Tinsley, Darth Mosk, Kevin Race, Jordan Cooper of All 13 Heroes, Rune Venler, HH28, Stefan Minton, Nick the Rat, Derek Zajac, Paul Roscoe, Jacob123, Poindexter G, Groppler, John Zorn, Mike Harris, Eric Santuan, Kevin Lowry, Captain Brazen, Jakey Gamer, Patrick Seba, Corey Martin, William Scheisler, Soylent Blue, Zane Majors, Dave Davies, and Olivier Part 2. Thank you very much for supporting the show, guys.
Have to get Dave Davies' opinion on this, being from the Kinks.
There's at least 5 British people on this list, so I'm looking to them to tell us what the opinion is.
I would be so thrilled if any of them would contribute to this debate, like how authentic.
Just expect a lot of "you what mate" coming at you via Twitter is basically the thing that I would expect from it.
You can tell which ones are British because they have U's in their name where we would not usually put a U.
When this thing posts, if you listen quietly, you'll hear a whole bunch of teacups hitting a saucer faintly in the background, and then you'll get a response on Twitter a few seconds later.
Actually, I don't know if the people who listen in the United States know this, but in Europe, in Britain specifically, the name of our show is What's All This Then? with Wes and Clay. Just to try and bridge that gap there.
Isn't it true? All right, loves. Thanks, bruv. Thanks, love.
Thanks, bruvs.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. And we'll be back next month with some more Patreon content and some kiki ma for you stabby lovers out there.
See you guys.
All right, thanks, guys.
Very nice. Bye.